do the demo. So what we'll be doing is to build a test for SOAP web services based on WSDL, so the description of the service. And we'll combine different operations from this service graphically into the canvas. So the canvas is what you are seeing here. This is a visual representation of the steps of our test and the visual representation of the calls we are doing to the web service. And we'll show you how to deal with input parameters and how to deal with what we call checkpoints. So checkpoints are verification, validation that we want to do, because this is the goal of the functional testing, is to validate, to verify that the response we've got from the web service or from the service or from the application is the reply we are expecting. So we'll build this test, and of course we'll show you the execution and the reporting we can get from the tool. So just for the demo, I'll switch off my camera to avoid any overloading of the network, and we'll switch to my virtual machine. Okay, so here we have a demo application which simulates a fly reservation system. So you can get information about available flights, and you can order a ticket, order a flight reservation from this application. So here you can discover UFT1 version 15 so far, which is the latest version. So once you launch the UFT1, you've got this beautiful start page on which you've got all the links to documentation, user forum, knowledge page, support, etc., and also some resource about the new features or the improvement done on the latest version, and you get access to all those information, detailed information. So, for example, just to highlight some very interesting features, new features on the latest version for you, around performance execution, parallel execution, of API testing. So we are able to, just like it said, to execute a lot of tests in parallel within one machine. So the result will be that you will improve the test execution time, or reduce, I would say, the time needed to execute all your tests, thanks to this functionalities, for example. Okay, so what we want to do now is to create a new test. So we can create a UI test, of course, but you can also create API test, what we'll do right now. Okay, so once it's done, we have this canvas where we'll add graphically the different steps and calls to the web services. And we have also access to a toolbox where we can find predefined and standard activities that allow us to do a lot of stuff. For example, that will allow us to add condition, loops, weights, etc. That will allow you to play with string manipulation, for example. That will help you to do FTP stuff, or for example to deal with files if you need to read or write files, etc. So there were quite a lot of predefined, pre-built activities you can reuse within your test. But for now, we want to test our web service. So we'll be using a WSDL in this case for the demo. But as you can see, we can use other technologies such as REST technologies or OData web services. And actually, so we're going to, not a good one, import a WSDL. So the description of our service, and this will create this local activity. So this is my own activity. Could be a web services, or could be another test that can reuse from this test. So in the context of my web service, flight service, I have a couple of operations that are available. So the first step I would like to do is to get a list of all available flights, but I can provide parameters. So here I have a section with input parameters, and I will choose a departure city, arrival city, and a flight date. So I have a different option to fill in input data. As the service description is providing this information, here I have already a predefined list of cities I can select from. So for example, I can go from London to Paris, but I can also type in the information directly within that to outcode some value. So I'll do London, Paris, and I will pick up a date for the day I would like to fly. Okay, so the 1st of April, it's not the joke, okay? And on the checkpoint view, here we have the structure of the response that will be replied by the service. So we'll see that in that I can choose to verify some value or structure. So I will do that just after. So just to be simple on the first step, here I've defined my input parameters, and I can already execute that. Okay, execution is done, and the report is presented to us. So on the report, we've got all the details for all the steps. So of course, actually, I've got only one step, still a simple test case, but I have all the details for this step. So, for example, what is the data, the body I've submitted to the service? So I found back the value I've provided, Paris to London for the 1st of April. Okay, I've got all the headers from the web service on input, outputs, and of course the reply. So important, the status code, so which will be verified automatically. So if the service reply with HTTP 500 error code, which is a server error, it will be, of course, detected and will produce an error on the report. And we have the response, the detailed response from the service. So here we can see that we have different flights available, and we'll be interested for the next steps of our demo on the flight number that will allow us to do a booking for this flight. So here we see that we have 2, 3, or 4, many different response, different flights available for the 1st of April on those destinations. And okay, we can see that we have some checkpoints. So actually only one is already in, which is the structural validation. So is checking if the structure of this response is valid or not. And he do that because he knows the description of the service. So it's comparing versus the WSDL file. Okay, so what we can do from there before calling another operation is to grab the data from the response, so we can add some more control or more validation within those checkpoints. So I have this little button that will load from replay. So based on what we have just executed, we'll grab the response. So as we said, we have many different flights. So this is an array, just like it's mentioned here. So here the tool is, yes, okay, is we'll grab all the response from what we have replayed. So here we see that we have 6 flights in the response, and for each flight we've got the detailed information from the response, and we can choose to verify those information or properties from the response. Okay. So now if I execute that just with the added verification, we'll see more on the report, and we'll see that the report is really detailed on the checkpoints that have been defined. So still have to go to my little step, and okay, here I have more checkpoints, and we are checking that we have 6 items within the array, okay, which is what is expected, and we are checking all the data from the response. So we are comparing the actual result with the expected values that are coming from the initial replay we've done. Okay, so of course I can make this more dynamic on the next step we'll show. But here already you have a really deep verification of the value that the responses are valid and the data are valid. So for the moment, I will clear the verification. And to show you something we can do also is to data drive the step or the test. So here we have different options to introduce input, variable inputs. I would like to replace those hard-coded values by some input parameters. So I have different options. So the first one would be to create by myself an input table for some data input that could be in different formats. So it can be coming from a database, it can come from an Excel file, it can come from an XML or what we call a local table. It's just embedded database, I would say. So on which, okay, I can manually create those. Okay, I have to add some columns. So for example, departure city. Okay, this is the string. There is a destination and there is a date I would like to fill in. Okay. So this is the manual way to do it. Okay, I've defined my table. I can fill in manually the data. I don't know, Frankfurt. I'm not German fluent, as you can see, and I can put my date, etc., etc. Okay, so I prepare my data manually, and from my step here, I can say, okay, I want to take the data from a data source, and I have already prepared a data source, so I just have to pick up the good field, and we have here a dynamic value. So this is a manual way, but we can automate this with this data drive step that will automate that. And I can choose to variabilize the inputs or the checkpoints or both. And I can choose to loop on those data source. So here, as you see, it's just created a data source in the form of Excel file, and it grabbed all the data from what we have already replayed. So nothing to do manually, everything is retrieved by the tool. And we can see within our parameters that everything is dynamic now. So we have variables here from the data source for the inputs and for the outputs, so we can verify dynamic response. Okay. And lastly, we can also import existing data from an Excel sheet if you have also some available. Okay, I will remove that to switch back to, I can like this. Switch back to the initial okay. So, okay, London, Paris, whatever. 1st April. Okay. No, I would like to introduce a next step. So I will like to create a reservation, to create a booking, which is called create flight order operation. And on this operation, we have to fill in some inputs, of course. So which class I want to be on the plane? What is my name? So the same, I could import that from a sheet, an Excel sheet, or dynamically create those Excel sheets from the replay. But what will be interesting here that I have to provide a flight number. And this information is coming from what flights are available. So this is something I can get from the previous operation I've called. So on the response of the first step, I can get the flight number. Okay, here the tool has detected that we can have many flights available. This is because it is an array. Yeah, this is an array. So he is asking what I want to do. Do I want to process only one flight, or do I want to process all the flights? So we'll show you both. First, I will just want to grab the data for one flight. Okay. And we can replay that. Okay, so on my report, I can see that I have different steps. So from the response of the first step, I know that the first flight available is this one, 103616. And so I would like to check that on the request I've done for the order, I'm using this same number. So I've extracted the information from previous response and reused for ordering. So that's exactly what I was expecting to do. So this is only processing one row. What I can do is to define a loop. So just to show you, I will recreate the step. It's so easy to do it. Okay. And the flight number, same as previously. I will take that from the response of the previous one, flight number. And this time I would like to add a loop to process all the response from the service. So here you see this little icon that would say, I'm doing a loop. We have different type of loops, and I'm looping for a certain number of iteration. And here, it will iterate on the number of flights that are available, flight counts. Okay. So with that, I can just add a parameter here, number of tickets or number of person I would like to add. So I can also introduce some dynamic value here. For example, I can use the iteration count from the loop. So the first time I will order one ticket, second time I will order two tickets, and so on and so on. So just play that just to see the report and to be sure that we've done the loop. Okay, on. Okay, and here more interesting, we are seeing appearing errors. So we have a highlight for an overview of the success of our test. So we have 6 failed steps and 3 passed steps. So we have first a detailed highlight of the failed steps, so we can analyze with all the provided information. So here the server has returned a sub fault. Probably this is an HTTP 500 internal server error, and we can view the detailed error message. Constraint value violation on the customer name must not be null, so I probably missed to put some input parameters on that. And I guess that is the same error everywhere. Sorry about that. As many times, the error is often between the keyboard and the chair. So here I've missed to put the customer name. Okay, please play back this. Sorry for this error.
No, it was good to see what happens in case of an error. If everything is okay, seems too easy to. So it's good to know, because eventually, there'll be errors from time to time. So, any questions while this is executing?
I have one. Suppose we want to put an assertion on ith number in the response. like, or suppose we want to verify the response for the item where the source was Paris. Um,
So so to put some assertion, we call that checkpoints.
mhm.
So here we can you can choose which information you'd like to verify. Okay, so just ticking the box, and of course you have to provide the expected value. So it could be hard coded, not the best, or it can be coming from other steps. For example, if you have the data that are coming from a previous test, you can just select them, or it can come from data sources. So what we can do frequently is to prepare an Excel sheet with the expected answer and say, okay, you have to use those data from the Excel sheet or from the database. Or we can even use variables, system variables, environment variables, or user variables, so I can define my own variables if I need.
Okay. I wanted to ask, suppose if in the response for the get flights, I get multiple flights, and I only want the flight number where the source or the destination is Paris. So can I just put a constraint in my response and then fetch only the flight number for the Paris?
Yeah, so here we have the empty checkpoints, but I can grab the data from the Excel or from the replay. So I'm doing that. So here we see the actual data, and I can select, for example, only the departure for response 2, and clean this one.
Yeah, and on top of that, what you could do is, we can imagine, let's say we get 6 responses, 6 flights, and we want a specific flight, either choosing the time of the day or the flight number. We could, in the canvas, sorry, we could put a condition and say we want to do the create flight order only for flight number so and so, or you can specify the conditions. But in this case, you would drag and drop, an if condition, and then if the flight number is so and so, then you would create the flight order. Otherwise, nothing, for example. So this is not directly. This is making conditions in the test according to some values, and performing actions or steps or not, depending on those conditions.
Okay.
We have also an alternative solution here, rather than checking all those provided data. I can work with XPath. So if I want to verify explicitly this flight number for flight number 5, I can create XPath condition. So you've seen I've just copied the XPath of the data that I'm interested in, and I can validate and I can put the value just as previously, or hard-coded, or coming from data source or variables, etc. So you can absolutely do all kind of verification, or globally, or a very precise verification.